Again. Good morning and welcome to the pre-bid conference for ITB 95 FY23, the Barcroft Elementary School HVAC replacement project. I am Brandon Christian, the Senior Procurement Specialist for Arlington Public Schools. During the conference, I will be reviewing the ITB and highlighting those areas which are considered to be of interest. Also representing APS today during the conference is Steve Stricker, the Manager of Facilities and Operation, and will be the APS Project Manager. Steve, would you like to introduce the Architect of Records?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So Bryce Watson from CMTA will be the project architect. I'm not sure if he's online right now, but Johnny Longfellow from CBRE here will be serving as the project construction manager, and they'll have full-time on-site presence.
Thank you. On Thursday, March 9th at 7 a.m., bidders have the opportunity to visit the Barcroft Elementary School site. Bidders interested in doing so are required to contact Steve to make arrangements. Steve's contact details can be found in the ITB. More information can be found in the ITB and will be addressed later during the conference. Questions are welcome during the conference and will need to be submitted in writing through the chat capability. Questions will be addressed at the end of the conference. The conference is being recorded and a copy will be posted to the current solicitation page of the Procurement Office website. It needs to be emphasized that it is the responsibility of the bidders to make themselves familiar with the requirements of the project and that bids are submitted in accordance with the bid documents. All right. Currently on the screen is the invitation to bid for the project. And I will be reviewing, scrolling down. All right. The first page is the invitation page. We do have the title of the project at the top. Take note of the bid closing date and time and the bid opening date and time. And that would be the bid closing is March 24th, 2023. And the bids will be submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. And the bid opening will be on the Monday following on March 27th, 2023 at 10 a.m. This is Arlington Community School Board operating as Arlington Public Schools. Throughout the ITB, we will be referring to ourselves as APS or the owner. Also take note down here that the title of the project and the address if needed. Okay. Bids received after the bid closing should not be considered. Confirmation is not provided at the time the bid is received in the platform. However, bidders can contact me at the email provided or the number provided, and I will give confirmation. Bids shall not be opened and announced prior to the bid opening on March 27th. And the bid opening date will be throughout this ITB. For further information, you can also reach out to me. My contact information is listed below. Also, we provide the link to the current solicitations page where this procurement is posted. Bid documents, drawings and specifications for this project will be available electronically as a PDF. Please reach out to Bryce Watson, excuse me, at the provided contact information highlighted. Highlighted here is the information for the pre-bid conference. This is a non-mandatory pre-bid conference. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the current solicitation page. We will later on be reviewing the examination of site section and the instructions to bidders section. Sorry. Bidders' questions may be submitted to myself, Steve, or Bryce. We are requesting to have all questions received by 5 p.m. local time, Eastern Standard Time, that is, by March 14th, 2023, so we can be able to provide answers and possible addendums or information items. Any questions received after that time, we cannot guarantee that we will be able to respond. Okay. Any updates to the ITB or the contract itself during the ITB process will be issued as an addenda. That will be posted on the APS website and in EVA.
Brandon, if I could just add on to that, our intent would be to issue any addenda no later than March 17th for the project.
Right. So that is an internal kind of process, but it's situations there may be an addenda issued closer to the closing date, but right, we try to give enough time for any addenda to the closing so the bidders can make their adjustments. Yeah. And then we also will be issuing any information items through the APS websites and posted on EVA. And just a quick note between the difference between the two, addenda are addressing changes in the ITB. Those will also need to be recognized in the bid form when you're submitting your bids. Information items are perhaps information that just helps clarify things, but do not address changes in the contracts. And those do not necessarily need to be, well, those will not need to be recognized in the bid form. Again, please ask any questions if clarity is needed. Below here is instructions to submit your bids. Bidders must submit their bids through the link provided in the current solicitations webpage. Bids received after the bid closing should not be considered. Again, if confirmation is requested, please reach out to me and provided is my contact information. We will not be accepting bids through email, fax, or in person. The bids must be submitted through the link on the current solicitations page. Again, stated here are the times and dates for the bid closing and the bid opening. The bid closing will be Friday, March 24th, 2023. And the bid opening will be Monday, March 27th, 2023 at 10 a.m. Highlighted here is the project description and background section. This section is a brief overview of the project. Steve, would you like to, at this point, say anything about the project?
Brandon, why don't you go through the rest of your presentation and then we can pick up with a brief overview of project scope and schedule.
Sure. Okay. The final section of the invitation is the negotiation procedures in the event the apparent low bid exceeds available funds. This ITB has bid alternates, so please review this section to understand how we will be selecting the lowest bidder if there are no bids within budget. We do have a ranking process for the bid alternates. And so the idea is to have a bidder submit a bid that can satisfy all alternates within budget. If that is not the case, there is no bidder, we will look to see who can satisfy the bids within the remaining bid alternates. And then we will be removing the bid alternates until there is an apparent lowest bidder within budget. Okay, the next section of the ITB are going to be the instructions to bidders. Highlighted in section 2 is the failure to comply with the mandatory requirements. Further down, we'll be listing the class 1 and the class 2 mandatory requirements. If those mandatory requirements aren't met, we will be issuing a non-responsive letter. All right, I'm gonna scroll through, excuse the scrolling to the next section. Okay. The next highlighted section will be the examination of site. Listed down here are the contact information for Steve. Please reach out to Steve if you are requesting to review the site. Again, the site visit will be held tomorrow, March 9th at approximately 7 a.m. But again, if you want to reach or if you want to view the site at any time afterwards, you would have to go through Steve. Okay. Moving on. Section 17, we have highlighted the minimum qualifications of bidders. We'll be referring to that in Appendix A of the bid form. Section 18, we list the mandatory requirements. For Class 1 mandatory requirements, we are requesting to receive those at the time of the submission of your bid. We will be requesting your Virginia Class A contractor's license. We'll also be requesting the required bid security of 5% of your total base bid. And again, all information will be needed to be filled out for the bid form. And again, Appendix A will be referencing the minimum qualifications of the bidder. The next highlighted section is the Class 2 mandatory requirements. These requirements may not be provided at the time you submit your bids, but will be requested upon. This information will need to be submitted within the scheduled time of that notification. For this project, we do require a signed certification regarding criminal convictions. We provide that documents in the general conditions section. Once the bidder has been selected as the lowest bid and approved, we will be requesting this document for execution of the contract. Scroll through to the next section, to the bid form. At the top of the bid form are instructions to submit your bid into the platform. Again, we like to address the Class 1 mandatory requirements for the bid and the Class 2 mandatory requirements for the bid. The section 10 of the bid form is where we will be requesting your Virginia contractor's license. Please provide all information listed below. In section 11, we'll be addressing recognition of the addendums that have been posted for the ITB. In section 13, we list or we are requesting your bid items. 1, which is the total base bid for your project. For bid item 2, we are requesting the pricing breakdown from your total base bid above. This section is a Class 2 mandatory requirements, so it may not be submitted at the time of your bid, but will be requested upon if you are the lowest bidder. This project does have a bid alternate. We do list the preference listings for the bid alternate. Okay. Again, the idea is to be able to have a bidder within budget for all 3 alternates. If that isn't the case, we will be looking to have the lowest bidder within budgets that can satisfy the base bid and bid alternate 1 and 2. And then so forth with the base bid and bid alternate 1. And then if that is not the case, we'll go with the lowest total base bid within budget. Highlighted below are the 3 bid alternates. Bid alternate number 1 is the new LED light fixtures in the multi-purpose room, gym, and media center. Bid alternate number 2 is the new domestic hot water system with multi-stack heat pump. And bid alternate number 3 is the new VCT flooring in the classrooms. Section number 14 of the bid form is contacts for the administration for your company. This will be my primary contact for any updates to the contract. In section 15, we do request your state corporation commission number. And section 17, request a list of your subcontractors. This section is a Class 2 mandatory request. So again, if you may submit your bid without this information filled, but we will be requesting this for this information for award. If you have any questions about the list of subcontractors, please reach out to me. Section 18 will be addressing any debarment status. Please have the section filled out in its entirety. Highlighted is a statement to ensure that the person signing must be authorized to bind the bidder in contractual matters. So please have the appropriate personnel sign off on the bid form, please. The following section of the bid form is Appendix A, where we request bidder's qualification. For this project, we are requesting a bidder with experience in major HVAC renovations, interior constructions, and educational K-12 and renovations of existing spaces. The bidder must have a minimum of 10 years experience as a Virginia Class A licensed contractor as of the bid closing. We also request substantial non-compliance information. In section 3 of Appendix A of the bid form, we do request demonstrated performances on relevant projects to be submitted. We are requesting at least 3 individual projects that involve HVAC, electrical, and interior renovation of schools or equivalent instructional buildings. We do request those projects to be of a minimum of 60,000 square footage. And the project should have a minimum amount of $8 million. The projects that you submit should be successfully and substantially completed within the past 10 years prior to bid closing. If you have any questions about the qualifying projects, please reach out to myself. Okay. And below is where you would list your project information. Lastly, we do request key personnel to be submitted along with your Appendix A. We request information about your project superintendent and your project manager. Both shall have at least 5 years of experience and have supervised at least 3 major projects. We also request a resume for both personnel. Following the Appendix A to the bid form is the standard bid bond. This is a Class 1 mandatory requirement, so this will need to be submitted with your bid. And we're collecting standard bid bond information below. Request their signatures. Let's get this rolling. The following section is the agreement between the owner and contractor. This will essentially be the contract once award has been given. I like to point to the contract period section of the agreements. Please take note of the schedule that's been provided. And if you have any questions or concern, please reach out to one of the representatives here today. So you know that this project is intended to have 2 phases. Listed in section 5 will be the agreed upon contract sum. The following section 6 addresses any liquidated damages. Please take note of the substantial completion amount and the final completion amounts for each phases. For phase 1, the liquidated damages for the substantial completion will be $2,500, and the corresponding final completion date for phase 1 will be $1,000. For phase 2, the liquidated damages for the substantial completion not being met will be $2,500, so excuse me. And then the final completion date will be addressed with $1,000 for phase 2. Rolling through. The next section after the agreement is the standard labor and materials payment bond. And then the following section is the standard performance bond. These 2 bonds will be requested once award is given. These documents will need to be returned to issue an executed contract. If you are the lowest bidder, the lowest approved bidder, we will be reaching out for this information and documentation. The next section is going to be the general conditions section. This will also be a part of the contract. It's pretty extensive and thorough, so please go through the general conditions section and let us know if you have any questions. Let me go down to page 66. I do want to point out on page 66 is the contractor certification regarding criminal convictions form. Again, this will need to be filled out upon award and needed to be returned for contract execution. Also, I would like to point out on part 13 is the insurance section. In this section, we do list the required insurances for this project and listed amounts per occurrence and aggregate limit. There is an appendix 2 that summarizes this section as a checklist. Now we'll be reviewing that later on. So please, at this time, if you have any questions before the question deadline about the insurances, please address those and submit those questions. For this project, we also do allow umbrella liability insurance. Go to the next section. Following the general conditions section is Appendix 1. Here are screenshots and steps required to submit a bid. And if you have any issues with the link on the web page or have questions about your submission, please reach out to myself. And as stated for Appendix 2 is the insurance coverage checklist. Please review and place an X in the first column if you are able to meet these insurances at the time you're filling out your bids. Please have your insurance agent sign off on the checklist and followed up by your company's signature. And that concludes the review of the ITB. Again, if there's any questions, I glossed over some of the highlighted parts that have been concerns before and points that we would like to highlight. Please review the ITB in its entirety and sections that I did not review, so you can be familiarized and answer all of the questions that may come up. All right, Steve, would you like to take over for your review of your sections?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Before I turn it over to Bryce Watson for a brief scope review, is it possible for us to ask the attending contractors to this pre-bid to sign in via the chat box?
Sure. I am able to print off an attendees list, but right, if you've signed in as anonymous, if you like to provide your information, please submit that in the Q&A section. Or if that is also an issue, please reach out to me to let you know that you've attended this pre-bid conference.
Great, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think Bryce Watson, it appears you have the ability to mute, unmute, and present. So if you want to go ahead and go through the scope real quickly, and then we can turn it over to Johnny for a quick discussion on schedule and logistics.
Yeah, sure thing. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Excellent. So I'll pull up some documents here. So thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Steve. Thanks everybody for attending. As Brandon mentioned, I'm Bryce Watson with CMTA. I'm acting as the project architect in many ways and the main point of contact for the design team here. So I'll walk you through briefly what we have. So the main scope of the Barcroft Elementary renovations project is to do an HVAC upgrade. So the chunk of the work is in mechanical and HVAC scope. Obviously, there will be some ancillary scopes that go along with that, both electrical, fire protection, architecture, and structural scopes as well. As Brandon mentioned, majority of the work will take place over 2 summers. It's a 2-phased project. There's a phasing sheet here, G002. Be sure to look through this. Tried to outline as much as we could all of the different sections of the phase and how they will interact and interplay with each other. But I'm assuming that, this will be the most complicated portion of the project and the way that the project is phased out. And this is where many of the questions and RFIs will be generated. So if you have any questions at all on this, please feel free to reach out so that we can all help answer that and gain a further understanding of the scope of work here. So since the mechanical portion of the project is the heaviest, I'll start briefly with that. So the existing systems here at the elementary school are a mixture of some rooftop units for the larger spaces, the cafeteria, gymnasium, libraries, and the rest of the school is mostly conditioned via a 4-pipe fan coil system, unit vents along the existing classrooms, in most cases with outdoor louvers that feed in outside air, and then separate heating water and chilled water piping systems. You'll see here in the documents are some of the as-built from the last renovation that was done roughly 25 years ago in the 90s, I believe, maybe up to 30 years ago now. So we reference back to those documents and use them to outline scope where we need to cut back demolitions and where we're doing tie-ins. There's not too many of those, but there are a couple. But please dig through these to see what these existing conditions look like and how we are trying to renovate the building and take out what is currently in these areas. There are areas of the scope, mostly in the gymnasium, library, cafeteria and kitchen areas that mechanically we are not touching or touching extremely minimally. So those areas will remain. As part of the phasing between the first and second summer, the main challenge will be to make sure that all of the existing systems will remain in place or will be able to be utilized during that school year between the 2 summers where the majority of the work is to be done. So all of the existing chilled and hot water piping, the unit vents, all of that will remain over that year. Some of the ductwork above the ceiling will be replaced with new ductwork, and it'll have to be reconnected to mostly a couple of existing rooftop units and then refed to those spaces temporarily for that school year. And then on the second summer, when all of the work is to be finally connected and completed, is when the rest of that equipment, the old equipment, meaning the unit vents in the walls, the old rooftop units, and a few other pieces of equipment will be removed. Main mechanical room over here on the northwest side of the building. There's an existing air-cooled chiller on the roof and boilers in this room. Excuse me. All of those will be removed and replaced in phase 2. I believe 90% or all of the work in this mechanical room is actually completed in phase 2. As you see here, here's some of the new ventilation ductwork and the heat pump ductwork. Most of this, as much as possible, is intended to be installed in that phase 1 work above ceiling. It won't all be able to be completed. Not 100%. There may be tiebacks to the heat pumps that aren't there yet that will have to be completed as part of phase 2. And as I said, some of these spaces, the ventilation ductwork will be connected to, like on this location here, is an existing rooftop unit that will serve ventilation to these rooms in that school year between the phases of work. And then on that second phase, that rooftop unit is replaced with our new outside air unit, and these final balances and final connections will be made. In the mechanical room during the second phase, here's that final layout of that. New pumps. There's a new remote sump tank here with a new cooling tower on the roof above that's going to replace that chiller there. And there are some new boilers here as well. Heat exchanger to separate those loops, but other than that, it remains mostly the same. That is the lion's share of the mechanical work. As I said, the real details on that are going to come down to the phasing in those 2 summers. There's lots of notes on the documents, and there's the phasing note here, which, as I said, tried to lay it out as much of that as possible. What that phasing looks like. I'm certain there will be questions generated as you look through that, items that we had not addressed or that had not come up previously. As I said, please ask as many questions on that as you can think of to help everybody out here. Touch briefly on the fire protection scope. The building is currently fully sprinkled and will remain so throughout the project and upon its completion. The main work for fire protection, as you'll see in the notes here, will be relocation of heads as necessary with the new ceilings that are going in. And if we need to relocate some branch piping that might be in the way of running new ductwork, or that you might have to cut through to get access to certain equipment or certain areas. But we ideally minimize any large piping or mains that would need to be cut in this scope, minimizing it as much as possible. But the idea here is to maintain the existing systems and have it be fully operational between the phases and obviously upon completion there. Electrically, for power feed throughout the building, we are not doing any major renovations, no change of system gear or any feeds. We will be rerunning from the existing panels to serve the new heat pumps throughout the space and the new lighting circuits. But other than that, very minimal work there. Most of the lighting and most of the work in the electrical scope is in the lighting portion. As mentioned previously, there is alternates in these large spaces that are otherwise being untouched, that namely the cafeteria, kitchen, the gymnasium, and then the library over here. The new lighting that you're seeing laid out here for those is part of that alternate, so please be sure to include those as part of an alternate price. But the rest of the building outside of those scopes is to receive new lighting as indicated on the plans here. And all of this work, as well as the ceilings, or a majority of it, I should say, is to be done in that phase 1 work and installed then. There are some areas, and it's outlined in the phasing document, namely in the admin and some of these music areas, where we do not plan to touch the ceilings until that phase 2, just because of how tight some of those areas are and maintaining those systems as they currently exist and maintain operation there. Structurally, we move on to that. There's very minimal structural work. Most of it will be for support of the new rooftop units that are on the roof. Both of the new rooftop units are in locations where there are currently units, but these new units will be larger and will weigh more, so we'll have some structural shoring there. And then outside of that, there is some existing steel dunnage above the roof, above the main mechanical room, where the current chiller rests. When that chiller gets removed, we're putting the new cooling tower on that existing dunnage, reusing that steel. So we do not expect any major additions to that steel or structure there, but we will be adding some screening in order to help reduce sound and sight visibility to some of the neighbors, as there have been complaints in the past, and we are wanting to help mitigate that as part of this project. Right now, those louver walls are attached to the steel dunnage. We are looking at moving those louver walls to the parapet wall of the roof itself and adding some more screening on the new rooftop units, the DOAS units on the roof. That is not currently in the documents right now, will be part of a future addendum. We're working through that and making sure we have all of that information, and we'll release that to you as soon as we are able. But that is the majority, or that is pretty much all of the structural work, just as needed to support the new mechanical equipment on the roof. Moving to architectural, again, only work as necessary to support these HVAC upgrades. So in that phase 1 is when most of these ceilings will be taken down and demolished, similar to the lighting. These music areas, admin, and then a similar space on the second floor are assumed to be done on the second phase, just to maintain those existing systems and make the best use of that space while we get to it. But these other spaces, majority of the classrooms, hallways, and these other spaces are having the ceilings removed during the phase 1 and the new ceiling grids put up along with the lighting. And when we look at floor plans, there is some demolition of floors and of a few cabinetries that go along in that phase 1. Most of this work is to be done to make space for the new heat pump closets where these heat pumps will be housed. And you'll see that new work here on the new floor plans. Most of those heat pumps are to, or I'm sorry, most of those closets are to be installed during phase 1. But after those closets are installed, we're assuming the heat pumps will not come until later on in phase 2, knowing the lead time issues with a lot of pieces of mechanical equipment that everybody is still facing. So that is written into the documents there. The demolition for the existing unit vents is also meant to happen in phase 2. Obviously, those will need to remain active during phase 1 and throughout that school year. But then phase 2, when we do the system switchover, is when those will come out. We have some details on how to shore the interior walls up on those and how to finish those. But the exterior is expected to remain. So the exterior envelope, we're not expecting any work to be done there. There will be some cutting and patching on the floors. And then the other addendum, the other alternate that was mentioned is there is some BCT options of flooring for the classrooms as well. So be sure to review that and look at that scope as well. Plumbing wise, we don't have any separate plumbing drawings because we have a very minimal plumbing scope. You see here, there's a few spaces, just two that I know of off the top of my head, where there are existing cabinets with sinks, and we're either raising those cabinets, putting in new cabinets that are slightly higher, or I think in one case pulling them slightly off the wall with a new wall location there. And then those sinks will just be replaced in kind with new sinks, but no other significant plumbing work except for the main mechanical room. The existing plumbing hot water plant sits here. It's an existing gas heater and storage tank. So the base proposal is to come in with a new gas heater, storage tank, and thermostatic mixing valve. That is listed out here, and then there is a schematics page, which, here we go, 504, which denotes the storage tank and the hot water heater and has the schedules for that. And then the alternate is to achieve the same effect, but instead of a gas water heater, we will have two heat pump water heaters, water to water heat pump units that was mentioned earlier. I think Multistack is one of the main brands and Colmac is another, but that should be all listed out in the documents there as to what those are. If you have any questions on that, obviously, please feel free to put in some RFIs there. And Steve, I believe that is the majority of the scope. One small thing to touch on outside of that is hazmat. There were some hazmat abatement documents in the manual that was released, but most of that has to do primarily with lighting fixtures and lamps. I don't think there were any other significant concerns outside of that. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, that's correct. I was going to mention that too as an add-on to your presentation, but thanks for picking that up, Bryce.
Yep. And one last thing I will add is low voltage. There is some work in the electrical documents that indicates new speakers and some fire alarm work, duct detectors. But a majority of the ceiling devices that currently exist, APS plans to go in and remove those on their own before the contractor gets into work. And then they will come back and reinstall those afterwards and work with you on that. But majority of that low voltage work will be, as I said, PA speakers and some fire alarm work. And I believe that's everything in my notes.
Thanks, Bryce. Yeah, that sounds pretty complete in terms of scope. Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Johnny Longfellow, our construction manager, to go through schedule, phasing, and logistics. Johnny, I think I need to make you a presenter. So you should be able to unmute and present, Johnny.
Well, look at that, the power of technology.
It's like magic.
Yeah, you had me nervous there. All right, let me share my screen here. All right, do you see my screen, the CPM schedule?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Job well done, Bryce. You pretty much nailed all the scope. I'm going to try to put a little bit of framework around the scope and kind of relate it to the phasing. So what you see here is we put together a CPM schedule. It's a preliminary project schedule that'll get issued with addendum number 1. The intent here is to help bidders get quickly acclimated to the project scope, the sequencing, and resource demands, and hopefully provide a good basis for the successful bidder to generate their baseline project schedule. So I'm going to kind of walk through the work breakdown structure and kind of hit the different pieces of the schedule. So the first section there, permitting, the building permit submission went into the county last week, 2/27. We're expecting the standard 3 rounds of county reviews. Most likely, we will not get the first review comments from the county prior to our last addendum being issued on 3/17. Not an ideal situation, but I don't believe we have a great deal of risk here due to the size and scope of the project, and to be quite frank, CMDA and VMDO did a pretty bang up job on the documents. So I don't think we got a whole lot of risk exposure there. We're expecting the approved building permit by April 21st, which is well in advance of the construction notice to proceed. Let's talk about contractor and material procurement. So after the bid opening on March 27th, we'll work to determine the lowest responsive and responsible bidder and deliver that recommendation to the school board by April 6th. Critical piece here is when APS's procurement officer reaches out to that apparent low bidder, whether it's for a Class 2 requirement or any other information that's required to get that recommendation to the board, you have to respond in a timely fashion. If we miss that 4/6 date, it has a direct impact on the administrative notice to proceed. Reason being, that recommendation's got to go to the board a week prior to when the recommendation will be an information item on a board meeting. And then after that information item, there's an action board meeting required. So we're going to get that recommendation there by the 6th to be able to have that information item on the agenda the 13th and for it to be able to get approved on the 27th.
Right. John, just as a note, at the time that we submit our selection to the board, I will be reaching out to that selection to just give them a heads up and to provide them a list of the documents. So hopefully by the time that the board can approve your selection, you can kind of already gear up with the contract documents that are going to be needed to execute the contract.
Got it. And even after we get that approval, we're still looking at a couple weeks to actually get the contract executed, right?
I mean, it kind of depends on review. It could be a quick, as long as everything checks off. Usually the longest kind of part is the insurance, making sure our risk management is okay with the COI that's submitted. Could take a couple of days, could take weeks, right? So we try to get ahead of that. Just as a notice to everyone here. I will try to give you a heads up to get that going before an approval is official, just so we can meet the times needed here.
Got it.
Brandon, Johnny, real quick, Brandon, if I could add on to that. So yeah, that's always kind of the hang up in our experiences, or certificates of insurance, but also the performance and payment bonds and the criminal certifications or other documents that we'll have to get sent over to us in order to execute the contract.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and right now we're allowing 3 weeks from when the school board grants approval and when we believe the contract will be fully executed and a notice to proceed to be issued. So if we can do better than that, that would be awesome. All right, let me keep moving here. So as far as material procurement, we believe the primary drivers are ductwork, door frames, light fixtures, and registers, diffusers, and grills. Right now, we are currently planning to have APS, the owner, procure the light fixtures and registers, diffusers, and grills due to long lead times that will impact work that has to happen in that first phase, summer of 2023. We are allowing knockdown door frames, so that should eliminate the lead time issue with hollow metal frames. There will be no major equipment needed for the summer of 2023 work. All of that equipment will be needed for phase 2, summer of 2024. So really, the way we see it, the success for summer of 2023 is really dependent upon the ductwork procurement, fabrication, and installation. We're not really foreseeing any extensive BIM process. This is going to be more of an old school type. We go in, get the ceilings removed, and bring out an experienced foreman or coordination guy that can come out and do the layout in the field and start sketching the ductwork and getting pickoffs generated and getting duct fabricated as soon as possible. Now let's Let's move into phase one, summer 2023 construction. So I think I did mention we're trying to get an administrative notice to proceed out in May 18th to obviously get, give the contractor time to get subcontractors awarded and get the submittal and procurement process underway. So the phase one construction notice to proceed for work on site will be June 19th. Bryce did a great job of explaining all the scope, but I'm just going to run through the items that we believe need to be accomplished in phase one. So you have demolition of existing ceilings and light fixtures. You have the build out of the new heat pump closets. You have installation of ductwork and hydronic piping associated with the new heat pumps and DOAS units. Obviously, you'll have ATC and power and lighting rough-ins, and we'll be putting in new ACT ceilings with new register diffusers and grills, lighting, and there will be sprinkler modifications and additions needed for that new layout, and obviously the new heat pump closets. The existing central plant and unit ventilators and rooftop units and hydronic piping and exhaust fans are to remain operational, as Bryce said. This equipment will be demolished and replaced in summer 24. Phase one substantial completion is August 11th. And that's roughly 8 weeks, which is 47 work days, assuming a 6 work day week. We're strongly, I mean, that's the way we've set the schedule up. We're strongly, at a minimum, we're strongly suggesting that the bidders look at least the critical trades and look at a 6-day work week and possibly 10 hours a day. Teachers are due back August 14th, and the first day of school is August 28th. That pretty much wraps up phase one. So let's jump into phase two construction. So phase two, the notice to proceed will be May 20th, 2024. So we envisioned an early start, to get a jump on the basically the heat pump closets. We feel like that's an isolated piece of work because they'll already be built. So we should be able to get in there and work inside those closets. Obviously, we'll have equipment by then and be able to get those set, make all the duct and electrical connections, ATC connections, and hopefully get a good jump on and get most of that work knocked out to hopefully lighten the load of the remaining work for summer of 2024.
Johnny, just to add real quick, a little caveat on that early work in May prior to school letting out, that would be off hours work.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be, and it really could be second shift, right, Steve? It could be second shift or night shift, right?
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so the bulk of the bulk of the rest of the 2024 scope includes demolishing the existing unit vents and repair of adjacent finishes, demolishing the central plant equipment, rooftop units, hydronic piping, and exhaust fans. That equipment is going to get replaced with a new cooling tower, plate heat exchanger, pumps, DOAS units, and new hydronic piping. As Bryce mentioned, there will be some roof modifications to accommodate the new rooftop equipment. As Bryce mentioned, also that's when we'll take out the domestic water heater, storage tank, and pump, and replace that. All walls and door frames will be painted in the work areas, so we're not doing any painting in the gymnasium, cafeteria, kitchen, or media center. In the base scope, we'll be removing and replacing carpet in the corridors. I believe there is an alternate to replace the carpet in the classrooms with VCT. Phase 2 substantial completion is August 9th, 2024. So that's a total of 12 weeks if you include the early start, the early May start at 71 work days, assuming a 6-day work week. Even with the early May start, we're still accounting, like I said, for a 6-day work week. And the reason being not just because of the amount of work, but as Bryce mentioned, there are some areas in the building that we will not be able to touch in summer of 2023, like the admin area. So we won't be able to get in there and get a lot of that heat pump ductwork installed and the hydronic piping associated with that, and get the existing systems removed just because it's so congested above those ceilings. And Bryce, I don't know if you mentioned that or not, but APS did go in over the winter break and remove a lot of the ceilings, and CMTA came out and did quite a bit of survey work to make sure and identify these areas where we thought that we couldn't get in summer of 2023. That's pretty much all I had for the schedule. Steve, you have anything you want to add, or Bryce?
I guess, Johnny, just to point out the schedule deliverable options, you might want to run through that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I know most of the bidders are probably knee deep into the drawings and into the product specifications, and probably haven't spent a bunch of time in the front end yet. But in the 01-3200 spec, the construction project documentation, make sure you take a look at that. We have a scheduling facilitator option in there, and what that is. So, the contractor has 3 options for providing a scheduling resource. Obviously, you can do it in-house. If you don't have it in-house, you're going to have to farm it out. And the third option is, you can work collaboratively with us, the CBRE. And, if the contractor chooses to use that option, we're going to help work with them, take this preliminary project schedule, turn it into the baseline project schedule, and work with the contractor to reduce bi-weekly and monthly schedule updates. And the intent here, obviously, we do not want to dictate contractors' means and methods. We're just trying to fill a gap, a resource gap that we've seen on past projects, especially these projects with short fuses. We're trying to tee it up the best we can for success, and if a contractor doesn't have in-house resources, the chances of them farming it out and making that resource work for them in the project is tough on these short fuse projects. So we're thinking, hey, if we can jump in and let the contractor focus all their resources on putting work in place, it seems like it would be an advantageous option for the contractor. And even if if that's not a road we want to go down, I still, at a minimum, I would love to have a kickoff meeting, a scheduling / phasing kickoff meeting with the contractor. I mean, we've had our heads in this for what, 6 or 8 months now. We've had a lot of good conversations. We've done a lot of site surveys. We got a lot of knowledge that, at a minimum, we'd want to pass on and have a conversation with the contractor.
Yeah, thanks for that, Johnny. 2 other things I would offer as a method of trying to assist with some resources and make this a successful project for everybody. Associated with the schedule conversation we just had, we'd also like to have a phasing conference. Bryce kind of laid out the phasing, as did Johnny, but you guys are the experts building this thing. So if there are tweaks to that phasing that make sense from a constructability and construction efficiency point of view, we'd certainly like to entertain those. The other thing I'd throw out there, again, as kind of a assistance with some resources, we are going to be putting a
draft submittal register out there for the bidders. You guys would still be responsible to provide the full submittal schedule. But again, this is something that we feel would help you guys kind of get a jump on that administrative piece of it. I think that's all I had. There's some other site things that we can discuss when we do our site walkthrough tomorrow. But Bryce, Johnny, anything else you guys would add at this point?
I'm good. Like you said, we can talk about laydown and storage and use of existing utilities and parking and field offices and
Right.
basically, everything that relates to the 015,000. We can talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing to add on my side, Steve. Glad you mentioned that. Yeah, we put a lot of time and effort into putting together the phasing and design, but if anybody as part of their bid or as part of the RFIs has questions or suggestions that might help the schedule or the process along, then we would definitely love to entertain that.
Great, thanks. Okay, appreciate it, Bryce and Johnny. Brandon, I'll turn it back over to you to close.
Yes, so at this time, if there are any questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A capability. I will say there is a big delay between us and the audience right now, so we'll give a good minute for there to be any questions submitted. All right, so at least I got one right now. Is it possible to get the report from the APS or pictures? Is the bid opening public? Yes, so the bid opening will be public. I don't think the link is up yet, but it will be in the current solicitations webpage in the project section, and the bid opening will be recorded and public.
I'm not quite sure what the question regarding the report from APS or the pictures.
Right. I mean, I do follow up with the bids afterwards, if that's the question. The bids will be posted also afterwards once the non-responsive review has been done. If there's any further questions, just go ahead and use the Q&A section. Okay, if there are any further questions, please submit them to one of the representatives here. And please take advantage of the site visit tomorrow at 7 a.m. And if you have any further need for a site visit, please reach out to Steve. I'd like to thank everyone here today and thank you for your interest in Arlington Public Schools.